the Ukrainian armed forces launched a massive offensive in the Kursk region. The Russian armed forces taught Syrsky a harsh lesson. Good afternoon, dear friends. You are on the Pravdarub channel. We continue to analyze the situation on the front lines daily. Before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to the channel and like the video so that more people can learn the truth. Let's talk about the situation in the Kharkiv region, where, surprisingly, the pace of advancement is currently higher than in the Donetsk region. We will delve into the preparations, including those on the Russian side, for the assault on the city of Kupiansk. We will examine all of this in detail today. So the Kharkiv region. As I mentioned, the pace of advancement is quite high. Not across the entire Kharkiv region, of course, but in a specific area. Everything indicates that Russian troops are planning to launch an assault on Kupiansk during the spring campaign. Currently, a stable bridgehead is being established. That is, preparations are underway. Look here, this is the bridgehead currently under Russian control, with a total area of almost 50 square kilometers. Just look at the length of the bridgehead. It stretches from the northern outskirts of Novopavlivka to the south of Kalinovo, almost 16 kilometers. In depth, the bridgehead currently extends an average of 4.5 to 5 kilometers. Moreover, the Russian army is making every effort to push Ukrainian forces further back. Not just 5 kilometers, but at least 10 to 12 kilometers. This is to prevent FPV drones from striking pontoon crossings. Currently, they can do so. Therefore, although heavy equipment has already been deployed, these were isolated cases rather than a regular practice. So the current offensive by Russian troops, if we look at the area around Dvurekhnoye and the village of Zapadnoye, is focused on 3 settlements. This is Doroshovka, located here. A small village situated 3 kilometers from Zapadnoye. But as always, there is a nuance. Let me show you. Look here. You see the terrain here. From Zapadnoye, it is necessary to first reach this elevation. This means a 500-meter slope with a height of 80 meters. Then another slope, a ravine, and on the next elevation lies Dorozhevka. There's no point in climbing here. So the task is to reach this road, which is located on this elevation, and then bypass the ravine. That's regarding Doroshovka. The second settlement under attack is Kutkovka. Look here, let's set everything up so it's clear. The village itself is not small. It is located on both sides of the river and lies in a lowland, which is very important. The movement is along this road from Dvurekhnoye, passing through a forested area. The advantage is that the road is on higher ground, while the village, as I mentioned, is in a lowland. The third village is Figolevka. Things are quite complicated here. Why? Well, it seems like the village is just a stone's throw away, and that's true. The distance is literally 2 kilometers. But you see, these elevations are under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. The road and the village are below, so the Russian army is currently focused on capturing these hills. Only then can they calmly cover the remaining 2 kilometers to the village. Lastly, and perhaps significantly, is the movement from Kalinovo to Kondrashovka. Currently, Russian troops are positioned 2.5 kilometers from the village, and Kondrashovka is the northern gateway to the right bank of Kupiansk. This is why Ukrainian channels are panicking, as Russian troops are essentially on the outskirts of the city. Everything indicates that battles for the city will take place in the spring. Overall, that's it for this area, so let's move to the Donetsk region. There too, the situation is extremely interesting, at least in one area. There are several news items from the Donetsk region, although, in general, it must be acknowledged that the pace of advancement has indeed slowed in early February. There are objective reasons for this. For example, the units that participated in the assault on Velika Novopavlivka here have now been sent for rest. At least some of the units. As you understand, Velika Novopavlivka was a heavily fortified area, and significant resources were expended to capture it. So the Far Eastern Marines have reportedly been withdrawn from here. Also, when the question arises as to why the advance did not increase after Kurakovo, but instead sharply decreased, the answer is simple. Only one brigade remains here, and not from the southern grouping, as before, but from the central grouping. That is, this entire area, plus the Donetsk and Chasiv Yar regions, is the responsibility of the southern grouping, commanded by Lieutenant General Alexander Sanchik. But specifically here, west of Kurakovo, all brigades of the southern grouping were withdrawn. Only one brigade from the central grouping was brought in. Therefore, the pace of advancement here is also low. In general, there is a regrouping of troops across the entire front, perhaps in preparation for the spring campaign, or perhaps for other reasons. I think everything will become clear soon. So, if the average daily advance in January was 13 square kilometers per day, in February, in the first days, the pace dropped to 4 to 5 square kilometers. Nevertheless, even at this low pace, successes are being recorded. For example, yesterday, Russian troops pushed through the Dakas. This was expected. The day before yesterday, the Ukrainian armed forces garrison was pushed back to the western outskirts, and the northern, eastern, and southern parts were occupied by Russian troops. Only 10% of the Ukrainian garrison remained here. Alive, I mean. They couldn't hold back the pressure for long, and they didn't. As a result, the village is now under full Russian control, and the remnants of the Ukrainian garrison retreated to Kupiansk. The distance between the villages is just over 5 kilometers. Not much, really. However, there are strongholds here, so don't expect a rapid breakthrough and that assault operations will begin on the eastern outskirts of Kupiansk tomorrow. Assault operations will undoubtedly begin soon, but not tomorrow. What else can be said about this area? American maps, as you can see, recognize Russian control over the village of Serebryanka. Fighting is currently ongoing for the village of Zaporizhzhia. Yesterday, there was also an attempt by the Ukrainian armed forces to counterattack in Nadezhdinka, which I wrote about in my Telegram channel, so go ahead and subscribe. The link is in the description. So at one point, the Ukrainian armed forces managed to recapture the southern part of the village, but by evening they were forced to retreat. Thus, they failed to stabilize the situation here despite their efforts. If we move to Pokrovsk, everything remains the same. Fighting continues in Udaknoye. Advancement is also being recorded south of the village, but so far everything is slow, with 100 to 200 meters per day being the limit. More interesting is the advance east of Kotlina. Here, daily progress is being made along the railway towards the western part of Pokrovsk. The total advance from Kotlina is now 2.5 kilometers, with 4 kilometers remaining to the first houses of Pokrovsk. If we move to the eastern flank, fighting for Yelizavetivka began yesterday. Control over this village will give the Russian army stable control over the highway, eliminating the risk of a flank attack. Also, attempts to reach Tarasivka and Zelenyi Pole continue, but no significant progress has been observed so far. Kursk direction as of January 6th. Ukrainian armed forces attack south of Sudzha. It seems that here too the Ukrainian armed forces are trying to solve their problems through active defense. Primarily this concerns the area south of Sudzha. Just the day before, Ukrainian units pushed Russian forces out of Makhnovka, preventing them from consolidating, and today they attacked from the north and west towards Cherkaska-Konopelka. The Ukrainian plan is clear: to retake Cherkaska-Konopelka and outflank Russian troops advancing in the Guevo area. The Ukrainian armed forces also aim to secure the supply route from Sumy, as they have suffered significant losses here in recent weeks, over 200 vehicles destroyed. By capturing this area, they hope to solve this problem, without which holding Sudzha becomes questionable. The battle is intense. Russian forces are trying to parry the blow. Russian equipment has also suffered losses. However, the Ukrainian armed forces continue to push forward stubbornly. Novopavlivka direction as of January 6th, fighting for Andriivka. The battle for this settlement resembles a fight for a small but strategically important city. The determination of both the Russian and Ukrainian forces is impressive. In some areas, a layered cake of positions controlled by Russian and Ukrainian forces has formed, the latter relying on fortified areas. Russian forces are trying to bypass these fortifications and cut off the logistics of Ukrainian strongholds instead of storming them head-on, given their high level of fortification. This is being successfully implemented. Yesterday, Russian units broke through to the center of the village and seized the road leading to the bridge between Andriivka and Constantinople. Simultaneously, attacks on the residential area of Constantinople continue from the south. Additionally, enemy sources report an unsuccessful attempt by Russian forces to break through to the village of Bohatyr. They reached the outskirts but then had to retreat. By evening, Dakhny was liberated. Clearing operations are currently underway. Thus, the Ukrainian front in this area continues to face pressure, creating the threat of another cauldron for the Ukrainian armed forces. Chasiv Yar direction as of January 6th. Situation: the assault on the city continues. Active combat operations are ongoing daily. Yesterday, Russian efforts were focused on the heights, where they managed to significantly push back the enemy, who is experiencing serious supply issues. Fighting also continues in the southern part of the city, where Russian forces are attacking the Shevchenko neighborhood and plant number 2. Additionally, Russian units have begun assault operations along the highway to Constantinople. According to enemy reports, forces are being amassed in this area for a possible strike towards Stupochki. That's all for today's update on the frontline situation. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and all the best to you.